I never imagined that at 68 I would discover that angels truly exist, not until my 6-year-old niece began talking to a golden-haired boy. Only she could see. What seemed like the mere imagination of a child traumatized by the loss of her parents became the most extraordinary experience of my life when I found out that this special friend named Gabriel wasn't imaginary at all. He had lived in my own house more than 60 years ago and had promised to transform Iris's solitude into an eternal family. This is the most unbelievable story I have ever lived, and I need to tell it before it's too late because there are things in this world that challenge everything we think we know about life, death, and divine protection. Stay with me until the end, because what Gabriel did for my family might change the way you see the miracles that happen around us every day. My name is Celia Hayes. I'm 68 years old, and today I need to tell a story that changed my life forever. It's about my niece Iris, who is now 23, but when she was just a little girl of 6, something extraordinary happened in our small house here in New Haven, Pennsylvania. Something that to this day makes me question everything I believe about this world and the angels that might exist among us. It was a cold December morning in 2007 when I received the call that would change everything. The state trooper's trembling voice still echoes in my mind as he informed me about the accident in the mountains. My brother Edward, 34, and my sister-in-law, Patricia, 32, were not coming home. Iris had lost her parents in an instant, and I, a 51-year-old single woman who had always lived alone, making a living as a seamstress, suddenly became responsible for a traumatized child. When I went to pick her up from the hospital, I found a completely different little girl from the one I knew. Iris had always been a cheerful, talkative child, full of life, but there, sitting on a blue plastic chair in the pediatric hallway, she looked like a broken porcelain doll. Her brown eyes, once bright as stars, now seemed like 2 empty wells. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just looked at me as if trying to understand why the world had collapsed upon her. During the bus ride home, which swayed through the cobblestone streets of the historic downtown, Iris remained in absolute silence. I tried to talk to her, pointing out the Christmas decorations in the shop windows, the colorful lights adorning the German-style houses typical of our region. But she kept her gaze fixed on the window, as if searching for something only she could see. My house on Maple Street was small and simple. A tiny 1-bedroom, a minuscule kitchen, and a bathroom that could barely fit 2 people. I had prepared a special corner for her in my room, with a twin bed I bought secondhand from my neighbor Marlene, a 45-year-old nurse who had always been very kind to me. I put pink sheets with flower prints on it, a few stuffed animals I got on sale at the downtown store, and even a small heart-shaped lamp. But Iris showed no interest in anything. In the first few days, she would just sit in the small backyard, under the old apple tree I planted years ago, and stare at the sky. It didn't matter if it was sunny or rainy, hot or cold. She would stay there for hours, as if waiting for someone to descend from the clouds to get her. I didn't know how to handle a child, let alone a grieving one. My entire experience was limited to the nephews I visited sporadically on Sundays, quick and superficial games before everyone returned to their routines. Now, suddenly, I was all Iris had in the world, and I felt completely lost. The nights were the worst. Iris would wake up screaming, calling for her parents, and I would rush to her bed to try and console her. But she would push me away, curl up in the corner by the wall, and cry until she fell asleep from exhaustion. I would sit there on the floor beside her bed, listening to her ragged breathing and wondering if I was doing everything wrong. During the day, I tried to establish a routine. I would prepare breakfast with homemade bread and warm milk, the way I saw other mothers in the neighborhood do. I would set the table carefully, using the colorful little plates I bought especially for her. But Iris barely touched her food. She would just poke at the crumbs with her finger, building little mounds on her plate, eating practically nothing. The worry began to consume me when I realized she was losing weight rapidly. The little clothes I brought from her parents' house were already far too big, and her cheeks, once plump and rosy, now seemed hollow and pale. I took her to the local clinic, where the nurse, Joanne, a kind woman of about 50, advised me on vitamins and supplements, but nothing seemed to work. It was during one of these distressing afternoons, as I was sewing on the old Singer machine I inherited from my mother, that I noticed something different. Iris was in the yard as usual, but this time she wasn't just staring at the sky. She was moving her lips as if she were talking to someone. When I got closer to the window to get a better look, I saw her smile faintly, an almost imperceptible smile, but it was the first one I'd seen since she arrived. I ran out to the yard, my heart pounding, hopeful that she was finally opening up to conversation. But when I got close to her, Iris immediately stopped talking and returned to her usual silence. I asked who she was talking to, and she just shook her head, saying it was nothing. That night, lying in my bed listening to Iris's soft breathing in the bed beside me, I couldn't sleep. Something was happening with my niece, something I didn't understand. And for the first time since she arrived, I felt a strange mix of hope and fear, as if we were on the verge of a discovery that would change everything forever. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of soft laughter coming from the backyard. It was a sound I hadn't heard in weeks, and for a moment I thought it was just a dream. But when I peeked through the kitchen window, there was Iris sitting under the apple tree, gesturing animatedly and talking to someone I couldn't see. And for the first time in a long time, she looked genuinely happy. That January morning in 2008, I decided I needed to understand what was happening with Iris. She continued to talk to herself in the yard, but now with more frequency and intensity. I prepared a special breakfast with apple fritters I learned to make from my mother, hoping to create a warm environment for a sincere conversation. I sat beside her under the apple tree, smelling the sweet scent of ripe fruit that was beginning to fall to the ground. The warmth of the Pennsylvania summer was already making itself known, even though it was still early, and the cicadas were singing their morning symphony. Iris was drawing in the dirt with a stick, tracing circles and lines that made no sense to me. "Iris, honey," I began in a soft voice, "can you tell me who you were talking to yesterday?" Aunt Celia got curious. She lifted her brown eyes to me, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a different spark in them. It was no longer the desperate emptiness of the first few days, but something like hope. "It's Gabriel," she whispered, almost as if it were a precious secret. "He's my special friend. Only I can see him." My heart sank. It was exactly what I had feared. A traumatized child creating an imaginary friend to cope with her pain. I had read about it in magazines that clients left on my sewing table. "And what's this Gabriel like?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral, without showing concern. Iris closed her eyes for a moment, as if visualizing someone very special. "He's tall, has hair like spun gold, and eyes as blue as the sky when there are no clouds. He wears white clothes that are always clean, and when he smiles I feel warm inside, even when it's cold." The description was so detailed and Iris's expression so serene that, for an instant, I almost believed there was truly someone there. But my rationality soon took over. "And what do you talk about?" I pressed, curious about how a grieving child's mind worked. "Gabriel tells me beautiful stories. He says my parents are okay, that they send me kisses through him. Yesterday, he taught me a song my mom used to sing when I was a baby, one I didn't remember. That caught my attention. Iris actually began to hum a melody I had never heard before, but it had a familiar quality, something that touched me deeply. Over the following weeks, the routine with Gabriel intensified. Every morning, Iris would go down to the yard and spend hours talking with her invisible friend. I would watch from the kitchen window while preparing lunch or folding the clothes I sewed for clients. I saw her laugh, make animated gestures, sometimes even run from one side to the other, as if playing tag. The most impressive thing was the change in her behavior. Iris started eating again, albeit slowly and with little appetite, but at least she no longer refused every meal. She began to talk to me during the day, sharing small details about her conversations with Gabriel, and miraculously, the nightmares drastically decreased. Then something happened that left me completely baffled. It was a Thursday afternoon when my neighbor Marlene knocked on the door, visibly agitated. She works at St. James Hospital and has always been a very practical and skeptical person. "Celia," she said, not even accepting the coffee I offered, "I need to tell you something strange that happened today." We sat at the small kitchen table, and Marlene explained that the night before, Iris had gone to the fence separating our yards and told her, "Aunt Marlene, you'll need to bring an extra sweater to work tomorrow. An old lady with white hair is going to arrive soaked from the rain, and will need something to warm up." "I thought it was cute, the little girl's concern," Marlene continued, "but I didn't pay much attention. But today, exactly as she said, an elderly woman came into the hospital completely drenched because she fell into a water-filled pothole on the street. She was shivering with cold, and I ended up lending her my spare sweater that I happened to have in my bag. I felt a shiver run down my spine. "It must have been a coincidence," I murmured, more to myself than to Marlene. But my neighbor shook her head. "Celia, the description the girl gave of the lady was exact. Curly white hair, a navy blue dress. She even got the age right, 73. That night, after Iris had fallen asleep, I sat in the kitchen drinking chamomile tea and trying to process what had happened. How could a 6-year-old child predict something so specific? I decided that the next day I would have a serious talk with her about this Gabriel story. But fate had other plans. On Friday morning, I was awakened by Iris's desperate screams. I ran to the yard and found her standing under the apple tree, crying hysterically and looking at the sky with a terrified expression. "He's gone! Gabriel's gone!" she screamed, pointing upward. I tried to calm her, holding her tight against my chest. "What happened, honey? Where did he go?" Iris was sobbing so hard she could barely speak. "Other men came, men in black, and they took Gabriel away. They said he couldn't stay here, that he was doing things wrong." The desperation in Iris's voice was genuine, visceral. She trembled in my arms like a leaf in the wind, and her breathing was so ragged I started to worry. I took her inside, made her a sweet herbal tea, and we sat on the sofa as she gradually calmed down. "Gabriel said he'll try to come back," she whispered between sobs, "but that it might take a long time. He gave me this before he left." Iris opened her little hand and showed me something that made my world stop. It was a small white feather, whiter than anything I had ever seen, and when the sunlight hit it, it seemed to glow with its own luminosity. I took the feather delicately between my fingers, expecting it to be just an ordinary pigeon or chicken feather. But the texture was different, softer, almost silky. And there was something else, a faint scent, like jasmine mixed with a morning breeze that emanated from it. "Where did you get this, Iris?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Gabriel dropped it when the men in black took him. He said I should keep it as proof that our friendship is real, that one day he'll come back for it." I stared at that feather for long minutes, trying to find a logical explanation. Maybe Iris had found it in the yard and incorporated it into her fantasy. Maybe it was from some migratory bird I didn't know. But deep in my heart, a small voice whispered that there was something more to this story, something my rational mind refused to accept. For the rest of the day, Iris was listless again, almost returning to the state she was in when she first arrived. She didn't want to play, barely ate, and spent hours looking out the window as if waiting to see Gabriel return. At night, she had the worst nightmare since she arrived, waking up screaming that the men in black were coming to get her too. As I rocked her back to sleep, I looked at the white feather she insisted on keeping close, and for the first time since becoming responsible for Iris, I began to question whether my understanding of the world was really enough to help a child who might be experiencing something far beyond what I could ever imagine. The following days were the hardest we had faced since Iris's arrival. Without Gabriel, she returned to almost complete silence, refusing to leave her room except for meals. The white feather never left her hands, and she caressed it constantly, as if it were her only connection to something precious she had lost. It was during this bleak week that I received an unexpected visit. Brenda Olson, a 38-year-old social worker from the county, showed up at my door one February morning with a folder under her arm and a worried expression on her face. She was a tall, thin woman, with brown hair always tied in a severe bun, and thick-rimmed glasses that made her eyes seem larger than they were. "Mrs. Hayes," she said after we sat in the small living room, "we've received a few calls from neighbors concerned about Iris's behavior. They report that the girl spends hours talking to herself in the yard and has been showing signs of social withdrawal." My stomach clenched. Marlene would never make such a report, so it must have been a more distant neighbor who was watching over the fence. "Iris is going through a natural grieving process," I replied, trying to stay calm. "It's normal for a child who has lost her parents to have some different reactions." Brenda opened her folder and began taking notes as she spoke. "I understand perfectly, Mrs. Hayes, but we also need to ensure she is receiving the proper support. I would like to speak with Iris, if possible." I went to get her from the bedroom, where she was lying on the bed, clutching the feather. "Iris, there's a lady here who wants to talk to you." She looked at me suspiciously, but eventually came to the living room, hiding behind my legs. Brenda tried to be gentle, crouching down to be at Iris's level, and speaking in a sweet voice. "Hi, Iris. My name is Brenda. Can I see what you have in your little hand?" Iris clutched the feather to her chest and shook her head, refusing to answer. "The neighbors told me you like to play in the yard. What do you play with out there?" Brenda insisted. "With Gabriel," Iris whispered almost inaudibly. "But he's gone now." I saw interest spark in Brenda's eyes. "And who is Gabriel? A friend from school?" Iris shook her head again. "He's special. Only I can see him. But the men in black took him away." Brenda exchanged a meaningful look with me before continuing. "And how do you know they took Gabrielle away?" Iris's answer sent a chill down my spine. "Because I saw them. They came down from the sky in a dark cloud and said Gabriel was breaking the rules, that he couldn't stay here taking care of me." The social worker spent another hour asking questions, observing Iris and taking notes. Before she left, she called me into the yard for a private conversation. "Mrs. Hayes, I'll be direct. The girl is clearly creating an alternate reality to cope with her trauma. This is common, but it can become problematic if not addressed properly." "What are you suggesting?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "I recommend you seek out a child psychologist specializing in trauma and grief. I have a few names I can recommend, and I will need to make regular visits to monitor Iris's development." After Brenda left, I sat in the yard beside Iris, who had returned to her favorite spot under the apple tree. "Aunt Celia," she said suddenly, "the lady with the glasses doesn't believe in Gabrielle, does she?" Her perception surprised me. "Why do you think that?" I asked. "Because she has a gray cloud around her. Gabriel taught me to see people's clouds. Yours is pink and gold. That's why you're good to me." Iris spoke with such conviction that, for a moment, I could almost imagine these colorful auras. That afternoon, I took Iris downtown to buy some clothes, as she was growing quickly. As we walked down Main Street, past the half-timbered houses typical of the German settlement, something happened that left me speechless. Iris stopped abruptly in front of the Historical Society building and began to cry. "Aunt Celia, there's a lady in there who's very sad. She lost something very important and has been looking for it for days." I looked at the historic building but saw nothing unusual. "How do you know that, honey?" I asked, crouching beside her. "Gabriel taught me to feel people's sadness before he left. The lady is on the second floor, near the front window." Against all my rational instincts, I decided to investigate. We climbed the creaky stairs of the old building, and indeed, on the second floor, we found an elderly white-haired woman sitting on a bench near the window, visibly distressed. I approached her carefully. "Excuse me, ma'am. Are you all right?" She looked up with eyes red from crying. "Oh, my dear, I've been looking for a bracelet I lost here 3 days ago. It was my mother's, the only memory I have of her. I've turned everything upside down, but I can't find it." Iris let go of my hand and approached the woman. "The bracelet is under the stairs that go to the basement. It fell through a crack in the floor when you were going down to see the craft exhibit." The woman looked at Iris in astonishment. "But how do you know that, dear? You weren't even there." Iris simply smiled and said, "My special friend told me. He's watching everything from far away." We went to the spot Iris indicated, and sure enough, there was the gold bracelet with small blue stones lying in a crack between the floorboards. The woman cried with relief, hugged Iris tightly, and looked at me as if my niece were a small miracle. On the way home, Iris was more cheerful than she had been since Gabriel's disappearance. "Aunt Celia, Gabriel said that even from far away, he can still help me help other people, that this is a way for him to keep taking care of me." That evening, as I was preparing dinner, I received a call that would change everything again. It was Dr. Arthur Schmidt, a 55-year-old doctor who works at the local clinic. "Mrs. Hayes, I need to talk to you about Iris. Can you come here with her tomorrow?" "Did something happen?" I asked, feeling my heart race. "It's nothing serious," he reassured me. "But some tests we ran last week showed interesting results. I'd prefer to discuss them in person." I hung up the phone with a strange feeling in my stomach. Since Iris arrived, my life had become a roller coaster of inexplicable events, and I had a feeling the worst was yet to come. During the night, Iris had another nightmare, but this time it was different. Instead of screaming in fear, she was talking in her sleep, whispering words in a language I didn't recognize. When she woke up, she looked at me with an expression of urgency I had never seen before. "Aunt Celia," she said, grabbing my hand. "Gabriel managed to send a message. He said something important is going to happen tomorrow, and I need to be ready, that our lives will change again, but this time for good." As I rocked her back to sleep, I looked out the window at the dark yard, where the apple tree swayed gently in the night wind. I had the feeling that we were at the center of something much bigger than I could comprehend, and that the next day would bring answers to questions I didn't even know I should be asking. The next morning, I woke to find Iris already standing by my bed, dressed and with her hair combed, holding the white feather, as always. "Aunt Celia, it's time to go see the doctor. Gabriel said today we're going to find out something very important." Her serenity contrasted with my growing anxiety. Dr. Schmidt's office was in the Riverbend District's Community Health Center, a simple 2-story building painted white and blue. We arrived promptly at 9 in the morning, and he greeted us with an expression that mixed perplexity and concern. He was a short man, with graying hair and reading glasses always hanging around his neck, known for his seriousness and competence. "Mrs. Hayes, Iris," he said, gesturing to the chairs in front of his paper-strewn desk. "I need to show you something that has left me quite puzzled." He opened a folder and pulled out several lab reports. Iris's blood tests showed some anomalies I've never seen in my 20 years of practice. I felt my throat go dry. "What kind of anomalies, doctor?" He adjusted his glasses and began to explain, in medical terms I barely understood. But the summary was unsettling. Iris's blood had a slightly different molecular composition than normal, as if some unknown element was circulating in her system. "It's nothing that compromises her health," he quickly clarified, seeing my panicked expression. "In fact, quite the opposite. All indicators show she is exceptionally healthy. But there's something science can't explain." Iris, who had remained quiet until then, suddenly spoke up. "It's because of Gabriel, Doctor. He said he left a little piece of himself in me to protect me, even though he's far away." Dr. Schmidt looked at her in astonishment, then at me. "Mrs. Hayes, may I speak with you in private?" I left Iris in the waiting room flipping through a children's magazine and followed the doctor to a smaller office. "Listen," he said in a low voice. "I know this may sound strange, but in all my years of treating families, I've never seen a child with such a special aura as Iris." "You believe in this imaginary friend story too?" I asked, surprised by the turn of the conversation. Dr. Schmidt shook his head slowly. "I don't know if I believe it, but I know something different is happening. Last night I reviewed all similar cases in my files, and I found something interesting. Did you make it to the end? Thank you so much for your attention. For more stories like this to be possible, please consider subscribing to the channel. It's fast, free, and makes all the difference." Returning to the story, he opened a drawer and pulled out a time-yellowed folder. "In 1987, I treated an 8-year-old boy with symptoms similar to Iris's. He claimed to talk to a special friend, displayed knowledge impossible for his age, and his tests also showed inexplicable anomalies." "And what happened to him?" I asked, fascinated despite my skepticism. "After a few months, everything went back to normal. The boy stopped talking about the special friend, the tests normalized, and he went on to live a completely ordinary life. Today he's a civil engineer here in town." We returned to the main office, where Iris was drawing on the back of a piece of paper. When I saw the drawing, I felt a chill. It was the figure of a tall man with golden hair, wearing white clothes, surrounded by other shadowy figures with threatening expressions. "Iris, who are these dark people?" Dr. Schmidt asked, examining the drawing. "They're the men who took Gabrielle away. They don't like it when guardian angels become friends with the children they're watching over. They say it's against the rules." During the ride home, Iris was more talkative than she had been in days. "Aunt Celia, Gabriel said the doctor is a good person, that he has a light blue aura around him. That's why he can see things other people can't." "And me? What color do you see in me?" I asked, curious about this supposed ability. "Pink and gold, like I already told you. Pink because you have so much love in your heart, and gold because you're being protected too, even without knowing it." We got home around lunchtime, and while I was making a vegetable soup, Iris was playing in the yard. Suddenly, I heard Marlene's voice calling me over the fence. "Celia, I need to tell you something strange that happened today at the hospital." I went to the fence to talk to my neighbor, who seemed visibly disturbed. "You know that elderly patient Iris predicted last week? Well, today she came back to the hospital, but not as a patient. She brought a homemade cake to thank us for the care, and as she was leaving, she stopped at the reception and asked about the special little girl who helped her find the bracelet." "So?" I asked, not understanding why Marlene seemed so frightened. "Celia, she described Iris perfectly, but she said she met her at the Historical Society 3 weeks ago, not the day before yesterday as you told me. And there's more. She claimed the girl was accompanied by a tall, golden-haired man who vanished when she blinked." I felt the world spin around me. "That's impossible, Marlene. I was there. I saw it all happen." My neighbor shook her head. "That's what I'm trying to tell you. Either the old lady is confused about the dates or what?" I asked, though I already knew the answer I didn't want to hear. "Or there really is something supernatural happening with Iris." That afternoon, While Iris was taking a nap, I decided to investigate on my own. I went to the backyard and started digging near the spot where Iris used to sit. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but I felt there was something there I needed to find. After nearly an hour of digging under the scorching sun, my shovel hit something metallic. Carefully, I excavated around it to reveal a small, rusted metal box, the size of a child's shoebox. Inside, I found old black and white photographs, time-yellowed letters, and a few personal items. The photographs showed a family from the 1940s, a young couple with 3 children, one of whom was a blond boy of about 8, who looked strikingly similar to Iris's description of Gabriel. On the back of one of the photos, someone had written, Gabriel Müller, 8 years old, 1943. Among the letters, I found one that chilled my blood. It was from a woman named Helga Müller, dated January 1944, in which she told her sister about the early loss of her son Gabriel to pneumonia. He was such a special child, the letter read. He always said he saw angels, and that one day he would become one to look after other sad children. When Iris woke up and came to the yard, she found me sitting on the ground with the box and its contents spread around me. She looked at the photographs without any surprise, as if she already knew I would find them. "It's him, isn't it?" she said, pointing to the photo of the blond boy. "That's the Gabriel, who was my friend." I picked up the photograph with trembling hands. "Iris, how is this possible? This boy lived more than 60 years ago." She sat down next to me and stroked the white feather she always carried. "Gabriel told me that when some children pass on too soon, they can choose to stay behind to help other children who are suffering, but only for a while until they find a real family." That night, lying in bed with Iris sleeping beside me, I looked at the photograph of Gabriel Müller, illuminated by the moonlight streaming through the window. For the first time since this all began, I allowed myself to consider the possibility that, just maybe, there were things in this world that my rational mind couldn't comprehend. And deep in my heart, a voice whispered that our journey was just beginning, and that Gabriel still had an important role to play in Iris's life, even while in the hands of those mysterious men in black, she so feared. The months of March and April 2008 brought a period of relative calm, but also of intense observation. After discovering Gabriel Müller's box, I began to pay attention to every detail of Iris's behavior, mentally documenting everything that seemed out of the ordinary. She continued to talk to Gabriel, but now more discreetly, whispering softly when she thought I wasn't watching. It was during this time that I noticed another strange phenomenon. Iris began to display knowledge that a child her age should never have. One day, while I was sewing a dress for a client, she approached me and said, "Aunt Celia, Mrs. Maria who ordered this dress is sad because her husband is sick with his heart, but she hasn't told anyone." "How do you know that, Iris?" I asked, putting down my needle. "Gabriel told me. He said that when we visited her house last week to drop off the skirt repair, he saw a dark shadow on Mr. John's chest. The next day, when 62-year-old Mrs. Maria came to pick up the dress, she was visibly downcast. "Celia," she said in a low voice, "can I ask you a favor? If you know of any good folk healers in the area, please let me know. My John is having some trouble with his chest, but refuses to see a doctor." My heart nearly leaped out of my chest. "Mrs. Maria, have you tried to convince him to get some tests at the local clinic?" She sighed deeply. "I've tried, but you know how men are. Stubborn as mules." Iris, who was playing in the corner of the room, approached timidly. "Aunt Maria, Mr. John needs to see the doctor soon. Gabriel said that if he doesn't go this week, the dark shadow will grow and be harder to cure." Mrs. Maria looked at Iris in surprise. "What dark shadow, my dear?" Iris pointed to her own chest. "Inside here. Gabriel can see when people are getting sick even before they feel pain." I don't know what went through Mrs. Maria's mind at that moment. But she left the house with a very thoughtful expression. 3 days later, she returned with tears in her eyes to thank me. "Celia, I managed to convince John to see a doctor, and they discovered a serious problem with his heart. The doctor said if we had waited another month, it could have been too late." This incident marked the beginning of a series of similar events. Iris started to help other people in the neighborhood with information she got from Gabriel. Always specific and accurate things. Mrs. Lord should check for a gas leak in her stove. Mr. Antonio needed to change his car tires before his trip. Little Camilla from up the street was developing an allergy to a new medicine. At first, I tried to discourage these predictions, afraid that Iris would create unrealistic expectations in people. But as each prediction proved correct, I began to question whether I should interfere or simply accept that my niece had become a conduit for something I couldn't comprehend. It was in May that everything changed again. Iris had started having different nightmares, no longer about her parents or Gabriel being taken away, but about a distant family looking for her. "Aunt Celia," she told me one morning after a particularly restless night. "Gabriel came back to visit me in my dream. He said our mission here is almost over." "What mission?" I asked, feeling a pang of anxiety. Over these months, despite all the oddities, I had grown accustomed to Iris's presence. She had become the daughter I never had, and the thought of losing her terrified me. "Gabriel said he came to protect me during the hardest time. But now I need to find a real family, a family that will love me like my parents did." Iris spoke with a maturity that frightened me. "He said this family has been looking for me for months, and that soon they will find us." 2 days later, on a sunny Thursday afternoon, what would change our lives forever happened. I was watering the plants in the yard when I heard the doorbell ring. Iris was playing under the apple tree, and when she went to answer the door with me, she stopped abruptly and said, "Aunt Celia, it's them, the family Gabriel told me about." At the door, I found a young couple accompanied by 2 children. The man, tall and dark-haired, about 42, introduced himself as Roger Peterson. "Mrs. Hayes, my name is Roger, and this is my wife Lucy. We're cousins of Edward, Iris's father." I felt the floor disappear from under my feet. Lucy, a delicate woman with curly hair, around 39, knelt in front of Iris. "Hi, Iris. I'm your cousin Lucy. These are your cousins, Miguel, who's 9, and Sophia, who's 7. "Sorry to show up unannounced," Roger continued, "but we only managed to locate you now. We live in Philadelphia, and when we heard about the accident, we started looking for Iris all over the state. We want to offer her a home, if you agree." Iris looked at me with those brown eyes full of a wisdom that shouldn't exist in a 6-year-old. "Aunt Celia, it's just like Gabriel said. They came to get me." Then she turned to Roger and Lucy. "Do you have a big house with a yard that has an oak tree with a tire swing?" Lucy smiled, surprised. "Yes, we do. How did you know?" Iris pointed to the air beside her. "Gabriel showed me. He said you have a lot of love to give, and that Sophia sometimes gets sad because she wants a sister." Little Sophia, a blonde girl with blue eyes, looked at Iris with fascination. "It's true. I always asked Mommy and Daddy to give me a little sister." The 2 children looked at each other and inexplicably smiled at one another as if they had known each other for years. I invited the family in, and we spent the afternoon talking. Roger explained that he and Edward were cousins on their father's side, but they had lost touch when he moved to Philadelphia to work as a civil engineer. Lucy was a kindergarten teacher and had always dreamed of having more children. "It would be temporary at first," Lucy explained, "to see how Iris adjusts. But our intention is to adopt her officially if everything goes well." Throughout the conversation, Iris remained by my side, holding my hand and stroking the white feather. When the family left, promising to return on the weekend to continue our conversation, Iris and I sat in the yard in silence. "Do you want to go with them?" I asked, trying to control the emotion in my voice. "Gabriel said I have to go," she answered simply. "He said you were very good to me, that you saved me when I needed it most, but that now I need a complete family to grow up right." Tears started to stream down my face. "And you? What do you want?" I insisted. Iris hugged me tightly. "I want to stay with you forever, Aunt Celia. But Gabriel said that if I don't go, the sadness will come back and he won't be able to help me anymore, because his mission will be incomplete." That night, after Iris fell asleep, I sat in the yard looking at the stars and trying to accept that, once again, my life was about to change completely. The apple tree swayed gently in the night wind, and for a moment I swear I saw a translucent figure of a blonde boy watching me from between the branches, as if to reassure me about the decision I knew I had to make. Over the weekend, when Roger and Lucy returned with their children, Iris already had her small bag packed. She had decided she would spend a week in Philadelphia to try out life with the new family. "If it works out," she told me, "Gabriel will say goodbye to me for good and go take care of another child who needs him." As I helped Iris pack her few clothes and toys, she handed me something that made me cry. Gabriel's white feather. "Aunt Celia, Gabriel said you should keep this. One day, when you're very sad or scared, just look at it and remember that angels are real." When they left that Sunday afternoon, with Iris waving from the back window of the car until she disappeared around the corner, I felt both devastated and strangely at peace. I held the white feather against my chest, and for the first time since everything began, I could feel a comforting presence around me, as if Gabriel were thanking me for taking good care of his charge. The week without Iris was the longest of my life. The house felt empty and too quiet, and I found myself constantly looking out at the yard, expecting to see her under the apple tree talking to Gabriel. The white feather she left me was always on my nightstand, and I would look at it every night before sleeping, as if it were a connection to something greater that I was still trying to understand. Roger called every day to update me on how Iris was adjusting. "She's doing great, Mrs. Hayes," he would tell me in a cheerful voice. "She plays with Miguel and Sophia, eats well, and sleeps peacefully at night. Yesterday she helped us find the car keys Lucy had lost. Said her special friend showed her where they were." On Thursday of that week, I received an unexpected call from Lucy. Her voice was different, lower and more worried. "Mrs. Hayes, can I talk to you about something that happened today?" My heart skipped a beat. "Of course, dear. What is it?" "Iris had a very serious conversation with us this morning. She said Gabriel came to say goodbye to her last night, and that now she needs to come back to New Haven to finish something important before she comes to live with us for good." Lucy paused before continuing. "She was very specific, Mrs. Hayes. She said she needs to help one last person, and that after that, Gabriel will leave forever." "What person?" I asked, intrigued. "She said it's someone on your street, an elderly person who is very sick and will need special help in the coming days. Iris asked us to come back to New Haven this afternoon." A few hours later, I saw Roger's car pull up in front of the house. Iris ran out and hugged me tightly, but there was an urgency in her movements that worried me. "Aunt Celia, I need to talk to you very seriously," she said, pulling me inside. We sat on the sofa, and Iris held my hands with a surprising strength for a 6-year-old. "Gabriel came to get me last night, in Sophia's room. He said our mission is almost over, but there's one last very important thing to do here." "What would that be, honey?" I asked, seeing the seriousness in her eyes. "Mrs. Amelia, the old lady who lived in our house before, is very sick. Gabriel said she's going to have a crisis tonight, and that if no one helps, she might go to heaven like my parents did." I felt a chill. Amelia Schneider, 81, was the former owner of the house, a very reserved German lady who lived alone in a yellow house 3 blocks away. I knew her by sight, but we never had much contact beyond polite greetings on the street. "Iris, how does Gabriel know this?" I asked, still trying to process the information. "He said Mrs. Amelia took care of him when he was alive, that she was like a grandma to him. That's why he can't let her pass on alone." Roger and Lucy, who had been in the living room listening to our conversation, exchanged worried glances. "Mrs. Hayes," Lucy said, "I know it might sound strange, but Iris spoke about this with such conviction that we thought it best to bring her back. We decided to go to Mrs. Amelia's house to check on her. The yellow house, in the typical German style of the region, looked normal from the outside, but when we knocked on the door, no one answered. Iris became visibly agitated. "Aunt Celia, she's inside, but she can't get to the door. Gabriel is saying we need to go in." We went to the back of the house and found the kitchen door unlocked. "Mrs. Amelia," I called out. "It's Celia, your neighbor." A faint voice answered from inside. "Here, in the bedroom." We found the elderly woman lying on the floor beside her bed, clearly in a state of confusion. She had fallen and couldn't get up on her own. "Oh, my goodness," she murmured when she saw us. "I'm so glad you came. I've been here since last night." Roger immediately called for an ambulance while Lucy and I helped Mrs. Amelia sit in a chair. Iris approached the woman and held her hand. "Mrs. Amelia, do you remember the Gabriel who used to live in our house when he was little?" The old woman's eyes lit up. "Gabriel? Of course I remember. He was my dear little neighbor. Always came over to my house for the cookies I made." She looked at Iris fondly. "Why do you ask, my dear?" "Because he's here now, watching over you. He asked me to come help because he didn't want you to be alone." Mrs. Amelia started to cry. "Oh, what a special girl you are. Gabriel was always an angel, even when he was just a little boy." The ambulance arrived quickly, and the paramedics confirmed that Mrs. Amelia was dehydrated and had very low blood pressure. If she had been alone for a few more hours, it could have been serious, one of them said. "You're lucky you found her." At the hospital, while Mrs. Amelia was receiving IV fluids and medical care, she asked to speak with me privately. "Celia, that little girl is truly special. When she spoke of Gabriel, I felt something I haven't felt in years." "What do you mean, Mrs. Amelia?" I asked, curious. "When Gabriel was little, he always said he could see angels. I thought it was a child's imagination, but after he passed so young, I always thought that maybe he was right." She squeezed my hand tightly. "Today, when the little girl said Gabriel was watching over me, I swear I felt a familiar presence in the room, as if he were really there." We left the hospital in the late afternoon, and Mrs. Amelia insisted on coming home with us to thank Iris personally. "I want to give something special to this extraordinary girl," she said. Back at my house, Mrs. Amelia entered the yard and went straight to the apple tree. "This is where Gabriel always sat when he came to visit me. He used to say this tree was magical." She turned to Iris. "Dear, I have something that belonged to Gabriel, and I've always wanted to give it to someone special." Mrs. Amelia opened her purse and took out a small golden medal in the shape of an angel. This medal belonged to Gabriel. His mother gave it to me before she moved away. After he passed, she said she wanted someone who knew how special he was to have it. Iris received the medal with reverence, as if it were the most precious gift in the world. "Thank you, Mrs. Amelia. Gabriel is very happy. He said he can go in peace now, knowing you'll be all right. Tomorrow I'm leaving for good, right, Aunt Celia?" she asked, playing with Gabriel's medal. "Yes, my dear. You're going to have a beautiful family and a happy life in Philadelphia. Did you make it to the end? Thank you so much for your attention. For more stories like this to be possible, please consider subscribing to the channel. It's fast, free, and makes all the difference." Returning to the story, "Gabriel came to say goodbye to me a little while ago," she said, looking up at the starry sky. "He said he kept the promise he made to my parents before they went to heaven, that he took care of me until I found a family that truly loves me. And what will you miss from here? I asked, trying to hold back my tears. You, Aunt Celia, and this tree, where Gabriel and I talk so much. But he said that whenever I look at the stars, I'll remember all the good things we experienced here. That last night Iris slept with me in my bed, holding both the white feather and the golden medal. I stayed awake all night, looking at my niece's serene face and wondering how I would manage to live without her. Iris's last day at home arrived with a golden clarity that seemed to bless our farewell. I woke up early and prepared a special breakfast. Warm homemade bread, apple butter I made from the fruit in the yard, and chocolate milk just the way she liked it. I wanted our last meal together to be perfect. Iris woke up different that morning. There was a serenity in her movements, a mature acceptance that contrasted with her age. She got dressed by herself, carefully combed her curly hair, and put Gabriel's medal around her neck, under her shirt. "Aunt Celia," she said as we had breakfast, "Gabriel visited me in my dream last night. It was different from the other times. He had a very bright light around him, and there were other people with him." "Other people?" I asked, intrigued. "Yes, my parents were there too. They told me they're very proud of how brave I was, and that now I can go on with my life knowing they're okay." Tears started to stream down my face. "And what else did they say?" Iris held my hand across the table. "That you were an angel to me too, Aunt Celia. That you took care of me when I needed it most. And because of that, Gabriel could leave in peace." After breakfast, we went to the yard one last time. Iris sat under the apple tree and closed her eyes, as if silently saying goodbye to Gabriel. When she opened them, there was a deep sadness there, but also a hope that reassured me. "He's gone now," she said simply. "Gabriel said his mission is complete, that he turned my solitude into an eternal family, just as he promised." She looked at me with those brown eyes full of wisdom. "And you know what else, Aunt Celia? He said that one day, when I'm all grown up, I'll help other sad children, just like he helped me." Roger, Lucy, and the children arrived mid-morning. Sophia ran to hug Iris as if they had been sisters for years, and Miguel, more shy, offered her a drawing he had made. "It's our family," he explained, showing the paper. "With you in it now, too." Lucy approached me while the children played in the yard. "Mrs. Hayes, I want you to know that the doors of our home will always be open to you. Iris is your niece, but she has also become our daughter of the heart. We want you to be a part of her life forever." During the lunch I prepared for everyone, Iris told her new family about Gabriel, about the adventures they had together, about how he helped her overcome her sadness. Sophia listened, fascinated. Miguel asked 1,000 questions, and Roger and Lucy showed an understanding and acceptance that moved me deeply. "In our home," Lucy said, "we also believe there are angels watching over us. If Iris had a special friend who protected her, that only makes us more grateful and happy." The time for farewell came in the late afternoon. Iris had packed her small bag with her few clothes, some toys, Gabriel's medal, and to my surprise, she also packed the white feather. "I thought you gave me that feather," I said, confused. "I did, Aunt Celia, but Gabriel said it needs to go with me to Philadelphia now, that whenever I need to remember you and everything we lived through here, I just have to look at it." We walked to the car in silence. The other children were already inside, eager to show off all the toys and the room Iris would share with Sophia. Roger and Lucy hugged me, promising to take good care of her and to stay in constant touch. When it was Iris's turn to say goodbye, we hugged tightly, so very tightly. "Thank you for everything, Aunt Celia. Thank you for not giving up on me when I was sad and wouldn't talk to anyone. Thank you for believing in Gabriel, even when it was hard. Thank you, my child, for teaching me that there are miracles in this world, that angels are real and that love can heal any wound." I kissed her tear-streaked face. "Be very happy, Iris, and never forget that you are special. She got into the car and waved from the window as they drove away. I stood on the sidewalk until the car completely disappeared around the corner, and then I went back into the house, which now seemed immensely empty. That first night alone, I sat under the apple tree in the yard and cried all the tears I had held back during the day. But as the stars began to appear in the sky, I felt something extraordinary, a deep peace and the certainty that I had done the right thing. In the following weeks, Roger called regularly to tell me how Iris was adjusting. "She's blossoming, Mrs. Hayes. She's a completely different child. Cheerful, talkative, affectionate. Sophia and she are inseparable, and Miguel treats her like the little sister he always wanted." 2 months later, I received a letter from Iris. It was the first time I had seen her writing, and the still uncertain child's handwriting moved me deeply. "Dear Aunt Celia, how are you? I am very happy here. Sophia is my best friend, and Miguel teaches me how to play soccer in the yard. Lucy makes apple fritters just like yours, and Roger takes me fishing on Sundays. Last night I dreamed of Gabriel. He was happy and said he fulfilled his promise, that he turned my solitude into an eternal family, just like he said. He sent you a kiss and said you were very important in our story. I miss you every day, but I know you want me to be happy. One day I will visit you with my new family. I love you very much. Iris." I kept the letter in the same place where I kept Gabriel Müller's box, like precious treasures from a time that changed my life forever. And every night before sleeping, I would look out at the moonlit yard and whisper a thank you to Gabriel, wherever he was. Life went on. I returned to my routine as a seamstress, but now with a different purpose. I began to watch the people in the neighborhood more closely, offering the help when I noticed someone was going through a hard time. It was as if Iris and Gabriel had awakened in me a sensitivity I didn't know I possessed. Mrs. Amelia became a regular visitor, coming for coffee with me every Thursday. We would talk about Gabriel, about Iris, about the mysteries of life that are sometimes much greater than our limited understanding can grasp. 6 months after Iris's departure, on a December afternoon, exactly 1 year after her arrival, I received a call that filled me with joy. It was Lucy, with news that made my heart overflow with happiness. "Mrs. Hayes," she said in an emotional voice, "we just left the courthouse. Iris's adoption was finalized today. She is now legally our daughter. And do you know what her first request was when we left there?" "What was it?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "She wants to come spend Christmas with you. She said she needs to show Gabriel, there under the apple tree, how happy she is and how the eternal family he promised has become a reality." I hung up the phone and ran to the yard, looking at the tree where it all began. A gentle breeze rustled the branches, making the leaves whisper as if carrying a special message. And for the first time since Iris left, I smiled completely, knowing that our story had found the perfect ending that Gabriel always knew would happen. Christmas of 2008 arrived filled with a special anticipation. A whole year had passed since Iris came into my life, and now she would return to show how Gabriel had fulfilled his promise. I prepared the house with all my love. I cleaned every corner, decorated with colorful string lights, and even bought a small tree to put in the living room. On December 23rd, Roger's car once again parked in front of my house. But this time, the Iris who stepped out was transformed. Taller, more talkative, radiating a genuine happiness that warmed my heart. Sophia jumped out with her, and Miguel followed close behind, carrying a bag full of presents. "Aunt Celia!" Iris ran into my arms and hugged me with a force that nearly knocked me over. "How you've grown, my child," I said, kissing her rosy cheeks. "And how beautiful and happy you look." During lunch, Iris talked about her new life with contagious joy. She spoke of her new school, where she already had many friends, the dance classes Lucy had enrolled her in, the Sunday trips to the beach with Roger. But I noticed she was constantly looking towards the yard as if waiting for something. "Iris," I said after we finished eating, "do you want to go out to the yard and see how the apple tree is doing?" Her eyes lit up. "Can I, Aunt Celia? I need to show Gabriel something." We all went out to the yard, where the tree was laden with ripe fruit. Iris approached the trunk and placed her hand on the rough bark, closing her eyes as she used to. For a moment we all stood in silence, respecting that special moment. "He's here," she whispered, smiling. "Gabriel is here, and he's very happy." She opened her eyes and looked at Roger, Lucy, and the children. "He wants to meet my new family." Sophia, fascinated, asked, "What does he look like, Iris?" My niece described Gabriel exactly as she always had. Tall golden hair, blue eyes, always clean white clothes. But this time she added something new. "And he's smiling so much because he sees I'm not sad anymore, that I have a family that truly loves me." During the afternoon, Iris showed me all the letters she had written to me but never sent, kept in a special little box she brought from Philadelphia. There were dozens of them, telling about her daily life, her new friends, her discoveries. "Whenever I miss you, I write to you," she explained. "It makes it easier." "Mrs. Hayes," said Lucy, "we want you to know that Iris talks about you every day. You are a fundamental part of her story, of our story now, too." Roger added, "We were thinking, how about you come spend a few weeks in Philadelphia with us? The kids would be so happy." Before I could answer, we heard bare feet coming from the bedroom. Iris appeared in the kitchen holding the white feather and Gabriel's medal. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "Gabriel wants to say something important." We all sat in the living room, and Iris stood in the center as if to deliver a special message. "Gabriel said his mission is truly complete now, that he saw how happy I am with my new family, how Aunt Celia is also doing well, and how our story ended in the most beautiful way possible." She paused as if listening to something only she could hear. "He said he's going to leave forever now, to take care of other children who are sad like I was. But before he goes, he wants to give a gift to each of us." "What gift?" asked Sophia, her eyes wide. Iris smiled. "For me, he gave the certainty that my parents are well, and that they are happy I found a new family. For Aunt Celia, he gave the proof that she has the heart of an angel and will always be special to me." She looked at Roger and Lucy. "For you, he gave the promise that you will always be a blessed family, because you opened your hearts to a child who needed love. And to Miguel and Sophia, and for you, he gave a sister who will love you forever." That night I lay awake thinking about everything that had happened in the last year. A traumatized child arrived at my home. An angel came to protect her, and in the end, we all came out of this experience transformed. Gabriel had truly fulfilled his promise. He turned an orphan's loneliness into an eternal family. On Christmas morning, Iris woke up early and went straight to the yard. When I found her, she was sitting under the apple tree. But this time, she wasn't talking to anyone. She was just smiling at the sky. "Gabriel is really gone, isn't he?" I asked, sitting down beside her. "Yes," she answered serenely. But before he left, he told me something very important. "What was it?" Iris looked at me with those brown eyes that now shone with pure happiness. "He said that angels are real, Aunt Celia, and that sometimes they don't have wings or appear flying. Sometimes they are special people like you, who take care of lost children until they find their way home." Tears of joy streamed down my face. "And you, Iris? What will you do now that Gabriel is no longer here?" She stood up and held out her hand to me. "I'm going to be happy, Aunt Celia. I'm going to grow up with my new family. I'm going to study. I'm going to make new friends. And when I'm grown, I'm going to help other sad children, just like Gabriel helped me." We spent Christmas Day in celebration. We ate, played, exchanged gifts. And for the first time in a long time, I felt my house was truly full of love and joy. In the afternoon, Mrs. Amelia came to visit and brought homemade cookies she had made especially for Iris. "My dear girl," she said, hugging my niece, "you've grown so much, and you look so beautiful and happy." Iris showed Gabriel's medal to Mrs. Amelia. "It protects me always, just like Gabriel protected me." When it was time for them to leave in the late afternoon, it was different from the first time. There was no sadness or sense of an ending, but rather of continuity. Iris hugged me tightly and whispered in my ear, "Thank you for teaching me that family isn't just who we're born with, but also who we choose to love." "And thank you," I replied, "for teaching me that miracles happen every day, and that angels are real." She got into the car, waving, but this time I knew it wasn't a final goodbye. It was just a see you soon. Today, as I write this story 15 years later, Iris is 23 and has graduated with a degree in child psychology. She works helping children who have gone through trauma, exactly as Gabriel predicted she would. We visit each other regularly, and she always brings Sophia and Miguel, who have truly become her siblings. Gabriel's medal is still always with her, and sometimes when she's working with a particularly difficult child, she calls me to say she felt a familiar presence helping her. "Gabriel is still around," she says, "watching over all the children who need him." Mrs. Amelia passed away peacefully at the age of 89, but before she did, she told me she always felt Gabriel nearby in her final years, as if he were repaying all the kindness she had shown him as a child. And me? I'm still here in New Haven, in the same house, under the same apple tree. But now I know that angels are real, that love can heal any wound, and that sometimes our mission in life is simply to be in the right place, at the right time, to support someone in need. Gabriel fulfilled his promise. He transformed an orphan's loneliness into an eternal family, and in the process, he also transformed my loneliness into something much greater. The certainty that I was part of a miracle, that I was an instrument of something divine, and that true love never ends. It only multiplies and spreads to touch other lives. The apple tree is still here, taller and more lush than ever. And every night before I go to sleep, I look at it through the window and whisper a thank you to Gabriel, wherever he may be, for choosing our home and our hearts to perform his last act of love on earth. Did you make it to the end? Thank you so much for your attention. For more stories like this to be possible, please consider subscribing to the channel. It's fast, free, and makes all the difference.